Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Subconscious CEO podcast. I am Jackie Adams, your host, and today I want to talk about something that is near and dear to my heart, and that is sourdough bread. And you might be asking yourself, why are you talking about sourdough bread, Jackie? What the heck does this have to do with literally anything you have to talk about? And I'll tell you why. Sourdough bread has become a recent hobby of mine, an interest, if you will. And it's taught me so much, not just about making bread and yeast and flour. And I'll get into all the lessons it's taught me about, but it's taught me about life. It's taught me about how to navigate life. And first of all, let me talk about this trend that is sourdough bread baking, because a lot of people have been baking sourdough lately, and I feel like it's been all over social media. And I honestly got into it because I saw several of my own friends on social media baking it, and it looked so pretty. And like, you could be so creative with it. You could do different things with it. You can make designs with it. You can paint it even with edible paints and food coloring. You can make it different shapes. You can use the starter ingredient that is the primary uh, ingredient that makes it rise in different ways other than just the standard bread. And as a kid, y'all, I used to hate sourdough bread. I didn't like that sour taste. But when I had homemade sourdough bread, like the real stuff with just the ingredients of the starter, flour, water, and a little salt, it blew my mind. It's so delicious, and it is so much healthier for you than regular bread. Even people who are gluten sensitive, they can actually tolerate sourdough better because it has a higher glycemic index. So it's not as harsh on your stomach and digestive system. So I want to tell you though, what this hobby of mine has taught me about life. And before I do that, I think I've already rewound a couple times, but I'm going to go there anyways. I just want to share with you the sensory experience of the sourdough. My favorite things about it. Okay, first of all, the sight. When I go to open up my Dutch oven after its initial rise to just see how high that little boule or whatever it's called gets. Oh, I love that feeling. It is so exciting to see how high it rises. Sometimes it doesn't rise as high, and I'm kind of like a little disappointed, but just when it does rise perfectly, it is such a beautiful sight. And then to see the top of it crisp up and any designs that I put in there to have them kind of come to life and expand. And then the smell, oh my gosh, the smell that it fills my kitchen and my entire house with. So fresh, so delicious, out of this world. And then just the feel, once it's kind of cooled down, to just grab that bread and squeeze it and feel like the crunch of it, how it's kind of not, well, it's a little flexible, but it's just, you feel like the tension in that crust. And then when you cut through it for the first time, honestly, waiting 30 minutes to cut through it is the hardest part of the process because it smells so good and I just want to eat it right away. But that sound of just the bread knife cutting through the loaf and then opening it up and watching the steam come out and looking at the inside, like the crumb of the bread, and just thinking to myself, I made that. I did that. I made this bread by myself. It looks good. It smells good. It feels good. The sound of it is so good, and it tastes to die for. It's just this feeling of pride. And the thing is, I've never really baked that much before. So why is it that all of a sudden I love this so much? And there's not really a straightforward answer other than it feels good. It feels good to me. It's like a dopamine hit. And other people may have zero interest in baking sourdough bread. And that's totally fine. This is not really about the sourdough. This is about what is it that you can think of, if it's not sourdough, that would just make you feel so good, that all of your senses engage to just give you this feeling of, oh, my taste, the sound, the feeling, the sight of it just is something that fills your soul, fills your heart, makes you feel love, makes you feel pride, something that maybe it is something you've worked on with your hands, maybe it's not, but it's something that you have worked towards to get that end result. Is there something in your life that you feel like you have wanted to try or you've started to try, but you got intimidated? Because let me tell you, having a new hobby is incredibly intimidating because when you look at sourdough bread, I'm a total type A personality where I'm going to go in and I'm going to learn, okay, what are the different methods? How can I do this? How can I make this perfect from the beginning? And it's like, success leaves clues, right? So I'm going to find the most successful people. I'm going to follow exactly what they did. I'm going to use their recipe. And then I use someone's recipe and it didn't work so great. And so I'm like, that's weird. How come it worked for them, but not for me? So then I find someone else's recipe totally different. Their result looks the same, and yet it's a completely different process. I try that and it works amazing for me one time. And then the next time it didn't work amazing for me. So then I got to think about all the different variables going on in my life, which is what's the temperature in my house, and not even just in my house, but the temperature of my countertops. What kind of bowl am I using? Is it glass? Is it aluminum or steel? Is metal? Is it plastic? All of these different variables, including how much time I spend in the different process of, the different stretch and folds and the bulk fermenting. These terms may mean nothing to you, and that's totally fine. I'm just saying that there are so many different pieces of any new process, new hobby, new skill, whatever it is that you want to do that you're interested in that could potentially feed your dopamine, that could potentially make you feel alive, that could bring joy into your life, feel accomplishment in your life, bring visibility to the world, or help healing the world. There's got to be something in you that wants to do something. And you just, what is it about human nature? A lot of times we just stop ourselves from experiencing it out of what? Fear? There are so many times that I actually started sourdough process. I failed a few times. I stopped. I wanted to give up because my loaf didn't come out right. I didn't know what I was doing wrong. I felt like I tried something new every single time, or I would be consistent and it would still come out wrong. And I stopped because I didn't want to continue failing. Have you ever done that before? Have you ever felt like you have tried over and over and over again at the same thing, whether you pivoted or did the same exact thing and got different results, and you started feeling like you were going crazy? Well, let me tell you something. There is no such thing as failure unless you don't choose to pull the lesson out of your mistake. It's so incredibly important when you do make a mistake or when something doesn't come out the exact way you wanted it to, that you take a step back, take a deep breath, and really taking a deep breath, even if it's just making sure that you fill your lungs all the way to the base of your lungs. Move your body a little bit, because every time we move our body physically, it helps energy flow through us so that our thoughts can flow through us and we can have a better clarity of mind as to what our next action step should be. And if it weren't for the encouragement of others and just my own self drive to continue moving forward, I probably would have given up on the sourdough hobby because I have messed up so many times. And honestly, I am so glad that I didn't know what I was getting myself into when I first started, because all of the many hours of loaves I have prepared and that have not risen, or my starter has died, or all these different things that have happened in the process over the past maybe 6 to 9 months since I started. Maybe it's been closer to a year actually. I would have absolutely not started the entire hobby if I had known what I was getting myself into, if I had known all the different failures along the way. And yet I am sitting here so glad as somebody who makes sourdough multiple times a week with multiple different inclusions. I've experimented. I have made so many people happy by gifting them loaves of bread, made all sorts of bagels and my gosh, so many different things that I have created with my own hands and my own imagination. I'm so glad I didn't know. And you're not meant to know all the different things up ahead when you do want to try something new, when you are ready to start that new hobby, start that new business, start that new modality that you want to practice and teach. I'm sure there are many things in your own life. I mean, I can think of another one, nursing school. I went to nursing school 15 years ago. Yeah, I was 12, by the way. Just kidding. I went to nursing school and I had only had the experience up until that point of working in a medical office that was an outpatient, like pediatric facility. And that's what my perception of nursing was. And when I got there, and they immediately sent me to first quarter clinicals at a nursing home, I was in for the shock of my life. I had never been into an environment like that. It completely shocked me to my core. And I knew multiple different places, including nursing homes and the hospital and all sorts of different procedures that I was bared witness to and that to participate in. I know without a doubt that if I would have known what I was getting myself into from the beginning, I absolutely would not have gone. I wouldn't have gone because I would have been too scared. I would have let fear hold me back. I would have let being grossed out hold me back. It's so important that when you do have an inkling, when you have just a feeling or a nudge, your intuition feels like it's guiding you towards doing something, accomplishing something, trying something out that you've never tried before, that you just take that first step. Because when you take that action, something will happen. If it's a failure and a lesson is learned, if it's something where you need to pivot, you begin to expand energetically, physically, mentally, emotionally. Parts of you expand when you try something new. The neuroplasticity in your brain and all of your neurons grows because then you're teaching yourself, you're rewiring your mind on a neurological, chemical, and subconscious level, training yourself that you can do new things. You can get good at new things. And not only that, you can expand your horizons, you can expand your capabilities. You can expand your knowledge base. You can become a better version of yourself, and you can begin to help more people in the world to expand their own horizons, their own idea of self-love, their own healing. When you show up for yourself, you show up for others because you are setting that example. You are setting that tone. So sourdough. Back to sourdough. And by the way, so my favorite new inclusions, I was just baking it just standard with starter that I got from a friend. And man, I had to spend like hours texting her. How do I feed the starter? How? So if you don't know what a starter is, a sourdough starter is like what is it called? Levanin? Oh my gosh. I hope I didn't get that word right. It's like the yeast, the natural live culture that helps the actual sourdough rise. I am not like a food scientist, so I apologize if I'm not explaining this correctly, but essentially you have to feed it. It's made of flour and water, but it doesn't become an active starter for like several weeks. And the more mature the starter, the better it handles in the bread. And so you have to feed it flour and water every, so often. You're going to get a lot of different opinions on this, whether it's every day, every week. I only feed mine once a week and it works great for me. So, and all sourdough is that starter, which is flour and water, and has turned into the healthy, active culture. And then water and flour and a little salt. That's all it is. And it breaks down into this, like I said, very, did I say high glycemic index earlier? I think I did. And I might have meant low glycemic index. Whatever it is, it basically means that there's less sugar, or it's, oh my gosh, you guys, I should have done my research before I recorded this podcast. It's healthier for you. Okay. It's better for you. It breaks down better in your body. It doesn't spike your blood sugar levels nearly as high as other breads do, with a lot of different chemicals and that aren't broken down by the sourdough. So yada, yada. I think of it as healthier bread. However, it is still bread. It is still a carb and a sugar. So I do have to be a little careful with eating it, but I feel a little less guilty about eating it. My favorite inclusions, though. All right. So I've done a few different. I've done jalapeno cheddar. I have done blueberry and lemon zest. Mwah, so good. And my favorite that I do now regularly is garlic and rosemary. And oh my gosh, if you just put then when that's straight out of the oven, the smell of it, and then you just put some butter on it. Oh, it's so good. A few other things that I do to mine is I will put on cream cheese on sourdough, and then I will sprinkle everything bagel seasoning. Love that. That is delicious. My daughter, my 8-year-old daughter, she is obsessed with that. She is like, "Oh my gosh, mom, can you put the cream cheese and the seeds on it?" Like, sure. Yes, I can. And then otherwise, I also love to cut mozzarella, like those little mozzarella balls. I like the full balls. I put those on top, and I'll put some pesto and then the mozzarella balls, and I'll put the toast in the air fryer. Oh my gosh, it's so delicious. Anyways, can you tell in my voice how passionate I am about this bread? Isn't that crazy? I never would have ever thought that I would have felt this way, and yet here I am making an entire podcast episode about a piece of bread. And it's not about the bread. It's about how it makes me feel. The pride that I feel when I successfully bake this loaf of sourdough bread. The humility that I feel when I mess up and then succeed. And also how many times I mess up and have to reach out to others for help. And then I have to discern whose advice I'm going to be willing to take, because so many different people have different opinions. So that discernment is so incredibly important in different areas of your life, of my life, of our lives. We have to discern who we trust to take advice from. And ultimately, your own intuition needs to be what guides you primarily. That is what's going to pull you through. The intuition of just that little nudge. What should I do next? And maybe the thing that you end up doing next as a result of listening to your intuition leads you to a mistake. But then that mistake leads you to a lesson that you didn't know you needed to learn, and that you would have never learned if you hadn't made the mistake. Mistakes are so incredibly important, especially in the process of learning something new. So what is it that's new that you want to learn about, that you want to do, that you want to try, that you want to succeed at, that you're scared, that's holding you back? What is your intuition guiding you to do? And how could you take that first step? That first step that seems so scary, yet once you get there, just take the first step and take a look back and say, okay, I took that step. I tried the thing. I signed up for the class. I reached out to the teacher. I put that post on social media. Was it a little scary in the moment? Sure. But taking action leads to taking more actions. It doesn't seem so scary if you just push through. And when you're pushing through on an action that has been guided by your intuition, I'm going to say you usually can't go wrong. It's most likely going to be putting you in the direction towards what is meant for you and your higher greatness. So, I wrote some notes before I started recording, and I haven't even really looked at them. Now I kind of want to look at what my notes were. I just was all of a sudden driving in my car, and I realized I want to make a podcast episode about sourdough bread and what it's taught me about life. And I voice noted myself on my phone, and then I pulled up the note just now, and I'm like, oh, was there anything else I wanted to say? I mean, basically, I'm here to tell you that when you just first take that first step, it begins to feel less scary as time goes on. You begin to see the fruits of your labor. You learn from your mistakes. You pivot until you get that dopamine hit in the right direction, and then you take more actions in even a better direction. You can do things differently. You can utilize discernment from the advice of others. You can decide to take the advice or not take the advice, take something into consideration or completely ignore it. And then just keep being consistent with your actions, and you'll feel again that dopamine hit. You'll see that glimmer of hope. You might feel remorse or sadness because of a mistake you made. And yet, once you get to that end goal, which honestly, it's all a journey, right? There will be this feeling of pride, of peace, of hope, happiness. And it's not just for you, it's for other people. If it's sourdough bread, you get to feed other people. If it's learning a healing modality, you get to heal other people. If it's showing up on social media to help other people with a service or product, you get to help other people. So if you just take yourself and your self pride out of it, you get to help other people. So isn't it worth putting yourself out there, trying something new for the sake of bettering humanity? Could you imagine? I mean, I've helped other people learn how to bake sourdough bread, and they were so thankful because then they got to provide for their own family. They got to bring happiness to themselves. They got to have a creative habit that they do with their hands, and that just honestly, it's so therapeutic. It is so therapeutic. But anything like that where you're just following the direction of your desires, it feels so good and it helps other people. So I want you to think about where in your life you could apply this. Is it sourdough? Do you want to make some? Or is there something else that you have been meaning to do, wanting to try, and you haven't? I want you to take the first step today, whether it's texting a friend saying, hey, I want you to hold me accountable for doing XYZ, or posting something on social media, or finding the sourdough starter. You can make your own actually, but you can also get some from the community or a friend, etc. But what could you do that could benefit more people and take an action in that step? That is what sourdough bread baking has done for me. And I hope that you will find something that will teach you the same. That is all I have today, you guys. Thank you so much for joining. And if you enjoyed this podcast, I would love it if you shared it with someone that you know. And please, I would love it if you could leave me a 5-star review and rating, etc. Um, and I do have a couple, not very many, but a couple openings for integrative hypnosis and Reiki virtually. So please let me know if you're interested. Reach out to me. I'm working on some services on my website, but that is a work in progress because I've been too busy baking sourdough bread. Anyways, thank you guys for being here. I really, really love you all. Mwah. Bye.